My name is José Atauri. I work at FUNGOBE, Fundación Fernando González Bernaldez. We are a foundation linked to the university, and our mission is to promote the knowledge transfer from university to the management of protected areas. Okay, so we are currently, among other projects, we are coordinating the LIFE RedBosques Clima, that maybe you already know. And we are very much involved into adaptation of forests through climate change. Okay, so in the context of this project, we have been developing a series of webinars. We have been talking about the use of silviculture for adaptation, the use of grazing, the use of fire. And in this edition and last one, we would like to focus on the in a more international context, to highlight the peculiarities or the singularities of the Mediterranean forests in relation to climate change and adaptation. So just to begin, I will share a little presentation. Sorry. Okay. So this is our webinar about nature-based solutions in a Mediterranean context. This is the basic facts of our project. We have a bunch of partners from the public administration, and we are working in several case studies or pilot areas in Spain. Just to start with some basic facts about climate change that you already know. Climate change is already here. We can feel it in our landscapes. We can feel the temperature increase, the less rainfall and more irregular and more intense and frequent extreme events, especially heat waves. And in a context of forest landscape, which is very vulnerable to these climate change effects. Most forest area at least in Spain, but in most Mediterranean areas is very young, is very dense, it's homogeneous, continuous, and with very few age classes, and very frequently forests composed of only one species. This makes them very vulnerable to droughts and wildfires. This is something that is, I think, already known. So our project and all of us, I think, are dealing with how to change these vulnerable landscapes into other kind of landscape with more adaptation capacity, with more species, with more heterogeneity, with more age classes, and with more chances to survive in a context of climate change. And also at the stand level, change this kind of forest very dense, very homogeneous, to other kind of stands more adaptable. These kind of landscapes are very usual in the Mediterranean, continuous blankets of very young forests, which are very vulnerable to droughts and to fire. Our speakers will talk surely about it later. And we can also highlight the importance of the European policies in this area. We have a number of directives and legislation about adaptation, about the biodiversity strategy, the strategy for forests, and especially the so-called restoration law, which highlights the importance of taking advantage of the synergies between climate change adaptation measures and conservation measures. And the underlying idea of our project is that almost anything that you do to improve the conservation status of ecosystems will have an adaptation component. So there's a strong synergy between these two policies that we have to take advantage of. But we have forests in a not very good conservation status. According to the Natura 2000 evaluations, a very representative area of Mediterranean and European forests are not in a good conservation status. So there's a need of management, of restoration, and also of adaptation to climate change. If we look at forests in Southern Europe, first we have to say is that southern countries are mostly forested countries. Sometimes we don't have this idea in mind, but if southern countries are very forested, we have a very significant amount of forest area of the EU, mostly pine forests and quercus forests. But due to environmental constraints, productivity is very low compared with northern and central European forests. As you can see in this map, there are very large areas in the south which very low productivity, and also affected with a very strong process of depopulation, of abandonment of rural areas, which makes difficult to develop a strong forest sector and to implement management into forests. This is, I think, one of the key aspects that we have to deal with. And we have forests that are, as we have said, very vulnerable to fires and droughts due to the climate change. So we have to develop some policies and approaches to transform these vulnerable landscapes into more resilient landscapes, using a variety of techniques and approaches, from silviculture, for clear cutting, for clearing, for thinning, from thinning to also protecting all the growth stands, using herbivory, using fire. Everything will be useful and compatible to get to these resilient mosaics. This is what we are dealing with. We don't have already the solution, but our aim is to help to change these landscapes, which are very common now in the south, to this other image, more heterogeneous, diverse, and resilient. So that's for making a little context. Now we have 3 speakers to develop all these ideas. We have Guillermo Centeno from the Spanish Ministry for Ecological Transition. He will discuss the priorities for forest adaptation being implemented in the Spanish administration. I think it will be inspiring for all of us. And then we will focus in 2 cases, 2 LIFE projects. João de Melo from Cascais in Portugal will show the results of LIFE Resland project involved in creating a resilient mosaic using herbivory, as he will show us. And Serena Corezzola from Italy, coordinating a LIFE with a European perspective, collecting management approaches all across Europe, and especially in the Mediterranean, the GoProForMed. So we will start with Guillermo, then João, and then Serena, and we will have the discussion after Serena. Okay?